Japan stands as one of the world's most fascinating civilizations, a nation where ancient traditions seamlessly blend with cutting edge innovation. This is the story of an island nation that has shaped and been shaped by over 2 millennia of remarkable history. From the misty origins of the Jomon people to the neon lit streets of modern Tokyo, Japan's journey spans ancient emperors and samurai warriors, periods of isolation and rapid modernization, devastating wars, and miraculous recovery. This documentary will trace Japan's transformation through distinct eras, from the emergence of the Yamato state and the influence of Buddhism, through the rise of the samurai and centuries of feudalism, to the dramatic opening by Commodore Perry and the Meiji Restoration. We will explore how Japan navigated World War II and its aftermath, achieved its economic miracle, and emerged as a global cultural and technological powerhouse while maintaining its unique identity and traditions. What makes Japan's story so compelling is this remarkable ability to honor the past while embracing the future. From ancient Shinto shrines to bullet trains, from traditional tea ceremonies to cutting-edge robotics, Japan demonstrates that tradition and innovation need not be opposing forces. Ancient Japan's prehistoric foundations were laid during two remarkable periods that shaped the cultural DNA of the Japanese archipelago. The Jomon and Yayoi periods represent over 14,000 years of human development, from hunter-gatherer societies to the dawn of agricultural civilization. The Jomon period, spanning an extraordinary 14,000 years, represents one of the world's longest continuous cultural traditions. These hunter-gatherers created Japan's first pottery, developed complex settlements, and established spiritual practices that would influence Japanese culture for millennia. The name Jomon literally means cord-marked, referring to the distinctive pottery created by pressing twisted plant fibers into wet clay. These ceramics, among the world's earliest, were not merely functional but served ritual and artistic purposes, featuring elaborate decorative patterns and flame-like projections. Jomon artisans also created mysterious clay figurines called dogu. These elaborate sculptures, with their goggle-like eyes and intricate body decorations, likely served spiritual or ritual purposes. Some scholars believe they were used in healing ceremonies or as protective talismans. Jomon communities lived in semi-subterranean pit dwellings with thatched roofs. These homes featured central hearths for cooking and warmth, with storage areas for tools and food. Archaeological evidence reveals sophisticated settlement patterns and seasonal migration routes following food sources. Around 300 BCE, a revolutionary transformation began sweeping across Japan. The Yayoi period brought fundamental changes that would reshape Japanese society forever. Rice cultivation, metalworking, and new social structures imported from the Asian mainland. The introduction of wet rice cultivation from Korea and China revolutionized Japanese society. Yayoi farmers developed sophisticated irrigation systems and terraced fields, creating agricultural surpluses that supported larger, more permanent settlements and social stratification. Metalworking technology brought bronze bells, weapons, and ritual objects to Japan. These artifacts reveal emerging social hierarchies, as bronze items were luxury goods controlled by elite groups. The distinctive dotaku bells served ceremonial purposes and demonstrated community wealth and status. Archaeological evidence reveals the geographic spread of Yayoi innovations across Japan. This map shows the distribution of bronze swords, bells, and stone tools, indicating regional specialization and extensive trade networks that connected communities across the archipelago. Modern archaeological research continues to unlock the secrets of ancient Japan. Reconstructed sites like this one allow researchers and visitors to experience how our ancestors lived, worked, and organized their communities during these formative periods of Japanese history. The Jomon and Yayoi periods established the cultural foundations that would define Japan for millennia. From the artistic innovations of cord-marked pottery to the agricultural revolution of rice cultivation, these ancient peoples created the bedrock upon which Japanese civilization would flourish. The Yamato state emerged in the 3rd century CE, marking the beginning of Japan's first centralized government. This period would lay the foundation for imperial rule that continues to this day. The Yamato clan established their power base in the Kenai region of central Honshu. From this strategic location, they gradually expanded their influence over neighboring territories, absorbing rival clans and establishing tributary relationships. The Yamato rulers adopted Chinese administrative systems and writing to legitimize their authority. They established a sophisticated court bureaucracy modeled after the Tang Dynasty, complete with ranks, titles, and ceremonial protocols. The imperial court was housed in magnificent palace complexes that demonstrated the power and sophistication of Yamato rule. These architectural marvels featured multiple courtyards, ceremonial halls, and administrative buildings arranged in precise geometric patterns. The Yamato state established the foundation of imperial rule through a combination of military conquest, diplomatic alliances, and cultural assimilation. By the 6th century, they had created Japan's first unified government, setting the stage for over a millennium of imperial authority. In the 6th through 8th centuries, two profound spiritual traditions would converge in Japan, creating a unique religious landscape that continues to define Japanese identity today. Shinto, meaning the way of the gods, emerged as Japan's indigenous spiritual tradition. This ancient belief system centered on the worship of kami, divine spirits that inhabit natural phenomena, ancestors, and sacred places. In 552 CE, Buddhism arrived in Japan through Korean emissaries, bringing with it sophisticated philosophy, art, and architecture. This foreign religion offered structured teachings about enlightenment, karma, and the cycle of rebirth. Rather than replacing Shinto, Buddhism gradually blended with Japan's indigenous beliefs. This religious syncretism created a unique spiritual landscape where Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines often coexisted within the same sacred complexes. Buddhist temples, with their multi-story pagodas and massive Buddha statues, became centers of learning and artistic achievement. These architectural marvels demonstrated Buddhism's sophisticated aesthetic and philosophical traditions. Both traditions became deeply embedded in Japanese daily life. Families maintained kamidana, small Shinto shrines for honoring kami and ancestors, alongside butsudan, Buddhist altars for memorial services and meditation. This religious synthesis profoundly shaped Japanese cultural values. Shinto contributed concepts of ritual purity, harmony with nature, and reverence for ancestors, while Buddhism brought philosophical depth, artistic sophistication, and ethical frameworks that continue to influence Japanese society today. At the heart of Japanese culture lies a powerful creation myth that has shaped the nation's identity for over a millennium. This is the story of Amaterasu, the sun goddess, whose divine lineage would become the foundation of imperial legitimacy in Japan. According to ancient Japanese texts, Amaterasu was born from the left eye of the creator deity Izanagi. As the goddess of the sun and universe, she ruled the heavenly realm called Takamagahara, bringing light and life to the world below. The most famous myth tells of Amaterasu's retreat into a cave called Amano Iwato. When her brother Susanu's violent behavior angered her, she hid herself away, plunging the world into darkness. The other gods had to devise a clever plan to lure her out and restore light to the world. Central to this myth are the three sacred treasures: the Yada no Kagami mirror, the Yasakani no Magatama jewel, and the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword. These objects became symbols of imperial authority, representing wisdom, benevolence, and valor, respectively. The myth reaches its climax when Amaterasu sends her grandson Ninigi to rule the earthly realm. She bestows upon him the three sacred treasures, establishing the divine mandate that would legitimize Japanese imperial rule for centuries to come. This foundation myth became the cornerstone of Japanese imperial ideology. The emperor was considered a direct descendant of Amaterasu, making the imperial line not just political rulers, but living gods on earth. This divine ancestry provided unquestionable legitimacy to imperial authority. The influence of this foundation myth extends far beyond ancient history. Even today, the three sacred treasures remain central to imperial ceremonies, and the concept of divine imperial ancestry continues to shape Japanese national identity and cultural consciousness. The classical period of Japanese history encompasses two remarkable eras: the Nara period from 710 to 794 CE, and the Heian period from 794 to 1185 CE. These centuries represent a golden age of Japanese culture, literature, and artistic achievement. The Nara period began when Emperor Kamu established Japan's first permanent capital at Nara. This era saw the flourishing of Buddhist temple architecture and the creation of magnificent wooden structures that still stand today. In 794 CE, the capital moved to Heian-kyo, modern-day Kyoto, ushering in the Heian period. This era marked the height of classical Japanese culture, characterized by refined court life, sophisticated literature, and distinctive aesthetic sensibilities. The Heian imperial court developed an extraordinarily refined culture. Court ladies wore elaborate layered robes called juni hitoi, with color combinations that reflected seasonal changes and poetic sensibilities. Every aspect of court life was governed by aesthetic principles and literary illusion. The Heian period witnessed an unprecedented flowering of literature. Japanese writers developed their own phonetic writing system, hiragana, which allowed for more expressive and nuanced literary works. Poetry became central to court culture, with elaborate poetry competitions and exchanges. Around the year 1000, Murasaki Shikibu, a court lady, wrote The Tale of Genji, considered by many scholars to be the world's first psychological novel. This masterpiece provides an intimate portrait of Heian court life and explores themes of love, loss, and the transient nature of beauty. Buddhism profoundly influenced Heian aesthetics and philosophy. The concept of mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of the impermanence of all things, became central to Japanese artistic expression. This aesthetic principle shaped poetry, painting, and the very way court nobles viewed life. The Nara and Heian periods established enduring foundations of Japanese culture. The aesthetic principles, literary traditions, and philosophical concepts developed during these classical centuries continued to influence Japanese art, literature, and thought for over 1,000 years, creating a distinctive cultural identity that remains vibrant today. Around the year 1000 CE, during the height of the Heian period, a remarkable literary work emerged from the Imperial Court of Japan that would forever change world literature. The Tale of Genji was written by Murasaki Shikibu, a court lady from the powerful Fujiwara family. As a member of the imperial court, she had intimate access to the refined world of Heian aristocracy. The Tale of Genji is recognized as the world's first psychological novel. This monumental work consists of 54 chapters that follow the life and loves of Prince Genji across 70 years, featuring over 400 characters in a sophisticated narrative structure. The novel explores profound themes that defined Heian court culture. Mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of the impermanence of all things, permeates the narrative. Courtly romance unfolds through refined poetry exchanges and seasonal festivals, while the beauty of nature reflects the characters' emotional states. The novel's prose demonstrates extraordinary literary sophistication. Murasaki Shikibu masterfully weaves together poetry, seasonal imagery, and psychological insight to create a work of enduring beauty that captures the refined sensibilities of the Heian court. The Tale of Genji established literary conventions that influenced Japanese culture for over 1,000 years. Its psychological depth, aesthetic sensibility, and exploration of human nature created a template for Japanese literature that continues to resonate today, making it not just a window into Heian court life, but a timeless exploration of the human condition. By the late Heian period, the imperial court's power was waning. As aristocrats focused on poetry and court ceremonies, real authority began shifting to a new class of warriors emerging in Japan's provinces. The samurai originated as provincial warriors, hired by wealthy landowners to protect their estates. These early warriors, known as bushi, were skilled horsemen and archers who served local lords in Japan's remote regions. These warriors were initially hired as guards for the imperial court and government officials. However, as central authority weakened, they began forming their own military clans and competing for power and territory. As the samurai class developed, they created a strict code of conduct known as Bushido, the way of the warrior. This code emphasized loyalty, honor, courage, and self-sacrifice, defining the samurai's identity for centuries to come. The rise of the samurai fundamentally changed Japan's social structure. A new feudal hierarchy emerged, with the emperor at the top, followed by military leaders, then samurai warriors, and finally farmers, artisans, and merchants. By the 12th century, samurai clans had become the dominant political force in Japan. Their military prowess and organizational skills would soon lead to the establishment of Japan's first military government, forever changing the course of Japanese history. In 1185, Japan underwent a revolutionary transformation. For the first time in its history, military leaders seized control from the imperial court, establishing the Kamakura shogunate and beginning an era of warrior rule that would define Japan for centuries. Minamoto Yoritomo emerged victorious from the brutal Genpei War, defeating the powerful Taira clan. In 1192, he received the title of shogun from the emperor, establishing his military headquarters in the coastal town of Kamakura, far from the imperial court in Kyoto. The Kamakura shogunate established a rigid social hierarchy with the shogun at its apex. While the emperor retained ceremonial importance, real power rested with the military government. This feudal system placed samurai warriors above farmers, artisans, and merchants. This map shows the extent of Kamakura control across Japan. The shogunate governed from Kamakura while the emperor remained in Kyoto, creating a unique dual power structure. Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines proliferated under military patronage, marking a golden age of religious architecture. The Kamakura shogunate faced its greatest test when Kublai Khan launched two massive invasions. In 1274 and again in 1281, enormous Mongol fleets threatened to overwhelm Japan's samurai defenders. The invasions tested not only military might but the very survival of Japanese independence. Samurai warriors adapted their land-based fighting techniques to naval combat, boarding Mongol ships in desperate close-quarters battles. Twice, massive typhoons struck the invasion fleets, destroying thousands of ships and drowning tens of thousands of Mongol soldiers. The Japanese interpreted these storms as divine intervention. The samurai emerged as Japan's dominant warrior class during the Kamakura period. Bound by the code of Bushido, these elite fighters served their lords with absolute loyalty. Their successful defense against the Mongol invasions elevated their status and confirmed the effectiveness of Japan's military government. The Kamakura shogunate fundamentally transformed Japan, establishing military rule that would endure for nearly 7 centuries. It created the samurai as Japan's ruling class, successfully defended the nation against foreign invasion, and developed a unique feudal system that shaped Japanese society for generations to come. Following the fall of the Kamakura shogunate, the Ashikaga family established a new military government in 1336 that would rule Japan for over 2 centuries. This period became renowned not for military conquest, but for an extraordinary cultural flowering centered around Zen Buddhism. The Ashikaga shogunate, also known as the Muromachi shogunate, differed significantly from its predecessor. While the Kamakura rulers had maintained strict military control, the Ashikaga shoguns exercised weaker central authority, but became great patrons of the arts and religion. Zen Buddhism, which had been introduced from China during the Kamakura period, flourished under Ashikaga patronage. This form of Buddhism emphasized direct enlightenment through meditation rather than complex rituals, appealing strongly to the practical-minded samurai class. Zen Buddhism profoundly influenced Japanese architecture during the Ashikaga period. The famous Kinkaku-ji, or Golden Pavilion, built by the third Ashikaga shogun, Yoshimitsu, in 1397, exemplifies how Zen principles of harmony with nature were expressed in architectural form. Perhaps the most distinctive Zen contribution to Japanese culture was the development of rock gardens, or karasansui. These austere landscapes of raked gravel and carefully positioned stones were designed as aids to meditation, embodying Zen concepts of emptiness and the beauty found in simplicity. The Japanese tea ceremony, which developed during the Ashikaga period, became a profound expression of Zen philosophy. The ritual emphasized 4 key principles: harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. Every gesture and movement was designed to cultivate mindfulness and spiritual awareness. Zen monks also revolutionized Japanese painting through sumie, or ink wash painting. These monochrome works emphasized empty space and suggested rather than depicted reality, reflecting the Zen teaching that enlightenment comes through understanding what is not there as much as what is. The Ashikaga period's embrace of Zen Buddhism created cultural foundations that would define Japanese aesthetics for centuries to come. The Zen emphasis on simplicity, harmony with nature, and mindful awareness became deeply embedded in Japanese philosophy and continues to influence Japanese culture today. The Sengoku period, spanning from 1467 to 1615, represents one of the most turbulent and transformative eras in Japanese history. This age of warring states saw Japan fragment into dozens of independent territories, each ruled by powerful daimyo lords locked in constant warfare. The political landscape of Japan during this period was dramatically different from the unified nation we know today. Instead of a single ruler, hundreds of independent daimyo controlled their own domains, creating a patchwork of competing territories across the archipelago. Each colored region on this map represents a different clan's territory. The Tokugawa in the east, the Date in the northeast, the Mogami in the north. Each of these powerful families controlled their own armies, collected their own taxes, and made their own laws. This fragmentation created an environment of perpetual conflict. The constant warfare of the Sengoku period was characterized by rapid military campaigns, shifting alliances, and technological innovation. Samurai armies clashed across the countryside, with battles determining the fate of entire provinces and the lives of millions of people. Central to this period was the rise of powerful warlords who would reshape Japan's destiny. These daimyo built impressive castles as symbols of their power and bases for their military campaigns. The architecture of these fortifications reflected both defensive necessity and political prestige. Among the most significant figures to emerge from this chaotic period was Oda Nobunaga, a ruthless and innovative warlord who would begin the process of reunifying Japan. His use of firearms, brutal tactics, and strategic brilliance made him one of the most feared and effective military leaders of the age. The Sengoku period fundamentally transformed Japan from a decentralized collection of feudal domains into the foundation for a unified nation. The constant warfare drove technological innovation, military evolution, and political consolidation that would ultimately lead to the establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate and centuries of peace. In the chaotic Sengoku period, when Japan was torn apart by endless warfare, one man would emerge to begin the brutal process of unification. Oda Nobunaga, born in 1534, would revolutionize Japanese warfare and politics through sheer ruthlessness and strategic brilliance. Nobunaga's rise began with a stunning victory at the Battle of Okehazama in 1560. Against overwhelming odds, his small force of 3,000 men defeated the mighty Imagawa army of 25,000 through surprise tactics and bold leadership. This victory announced the arrival of a new type of warrior. Nobunaga revolutionized Japanese warfare through four key innovations. He was the first to integrate firearms on a massive scale, using Portuguese matchlocks to devastating effect. His castle-building program, exemplified by Azuchi Castle, introduced stone foundations and new defensive designs. He created Japan's first truly professional army, with full-time soldiers promoted based on merit rather than birth. Most importantly, he understood that controlling trade routes and markets was as crucial as winning battles. Nobunaga's methods were unprecedented in their brutality. He systematically destroyed Buddhist monasteries that opposed him, viewing them as political threats. His policy of mass executions and total warfare shocked even his contemporaries. Contemporary accounts, including those of Jesuit missionaries, describe Nobunaga as a man who showed no mercy to those who opposed him. His ruthlessness was calculated, designed to break the will of his enemies and establish absolute authority. By the time of his death in 1582, Nobunaga controlled one-third of Japan and had fundamentally transformed the nature of Japanese warfare and politics. Though he was assassinated before completing unification, his innovations and methods laid the foundation for Japan's eventual unity under his successors. Nobunaga's legacy extends far beyond his military conquests. He broke the power of traditional institutions, introduced new technologies, and established the precedent for centralized rule that would define Japan for centuries to come. The ruthless unifier had set Japan on the path to becoming a unified nation. Following Oda Nobunaga's death in 1582, Japan stood on the brink of either complete unification or a return to chaos. Two remarkable leaders would complete what Nobunaga had started, bringing all of Japan under a single rule for the first time in centuries. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, once a lowly foot soldier in Nobunaga's army, seized power after his master's death. Born a peasant, Hideyoshi's rise to become Japan's supreme ruler was unprecedented in a society rigidly divided by class. Between 1582 and 1590, Hideyoshi systematically conquered the remaining independent daimyo across Japan. His campaigns combined military might with shrewd diplomacy, often convincing enemies to surrender rather than face destruction. By 1590, Hideyoshi had achieved what seemed impossible: the complete unification of Japan. However, his death in 1598 left behind a 5-year-old heir and a council of regents, creating a dangerous power vacuum that threatened to tear the country apart once again. Tokugawa Ieyasu, the most powerful of the regents, had been Hideyoshi's ally, but also his greatest potential rival. A master of patience and political calculation, Ieyasu began consolidating power while other daimyo chose sides in the brewing conflict. On October 21st, 1600, the fate of Japan was decided in a single morning at Sekigahara. This narrow valley became the stage for the most decisive battle in Japanese history, determining whether the Tokugawa or their rivals would rule the unified nation. Despite being outnumbered, Tokugawa's forces achieved a crushing victory when several key Western daimyo switched sides during the battle. The defeat was so complete that it ended centuries of civil war and established Tokugawa dominance over all Japan. In 1603, Tokugawa Ieyasu was appointed shogun by the emperor, formally establishing the Tokugawa shogunate that would rule Japan for the next 265 years. Japan was finally unified under a single, stable government that would bring unprecedented peace and prosperity. The unification of Japan under Hideyoshi and Tokugawa represents one of history's most remarkable political achievements. From the chaos of the Sengoku period emerged a unified nation that would remain at peace for over 2.5 centuries, setting the stage for Japan's unique cultural development during the Edo period. The Edo period, spanning from 1603 to 1868, represents one of the most remarkable eras in Japanese history. Under the Tokugawa shogunate, Japan experienced unprecedented peace, stability, and cultural flourishing while maintaining strict isolation from the outside world. After centuries of warfare during the Sengoku period, Tokugawa Ieyasu established a new shogunate in Edo, modern-day Tokyo. The Tokugawa family crest, featuring 3 hollyhock leaves, became the symbol of an era that would bring Japan its longest period of peace and stability. The Tokugawa established a rigid social hierarchy known as the 4-class system. At the top sat the emperor as a divine figurehead, while the shogun held actual political power. Below them were the daimyo regional lords, followed by the samurai warrior class. The majority of the population consisted of peasants, valued for producing food, then craftsmen who created goods, and finally merchants, who, despite often being wealthy, were considered the lowest class for producing nothing tangible. During the peaceful Edo period, the samurai class underwent a dramatic transformation. No longer needed as warriors, many became bureaucrats, scholars, and administrators. While they maintained their martial traditions and developed the Bushido code of honor, many samurai actually struggled financially, as their stipends remained fixed while merchants grew wealthy through trade. Despite its isolation, Japan experienced remarkable economic growth during the Edo period. The population doubled to 30 million people, and Edo became the world's largest city with over 1 million inhabitants. Advanced agricultural techniques increased food production, while sophisticated merchant networks, banking systems, and early industrial development laid the foundation for Japan's later modernization. The Edo period witnessed an extraordinary cultural renaissance. Ukiyo-e woodblock prints captured the floating world of urban pleasure districts, depicting everything from beautiful courtesans to dramatic landscapes. Kabuki theater entertained the masses, while haiku poetry reached new artistic heights. The merchant class, despite their low social status, became patrons of arts and literature, creating a vibrant popular culture that celebrated the pleasures of urban life. Daily life in Edo, Japan was governed by strict social etiquette and seasonal rhythms. Despite the rigid hierarchy, a sophisticated urban culture emerged with high literacy rates, skilled craftsmanship, and vibrant festivals. People could travel for pilgrimage and trade, creating a sense of national identity even within the constraints of the feudal system. The Edo period created the cultural and social foundations of modern Japan. Through 2.5 centuries of peace, isolation, and internal development, Japan built a sophisticated society that would prove remarkably adaptable when forced to open to the world in the mid-19th century. In 1633, Japan implemented one of history's most comprehensive isolation policies, known as sakoku, literally meaning closed country. This policy would seal Japan off from most foreign contact for over 2 centuries. Before sakoku, Japan maintained extensive trade networks across East Asia. Japanese merchants and pirates, known as wako, operated throughout the region, trading goods like gold, silver, and swords for silk, porcelain, and other luxury items from China and Korea. The primary motivation for sakoku was the perceived threat of Christianity. Portuguese missionaries had arrived in 1549, and Christianity spread rapidly among the Japanese population. The Tokugawa shogunate viewed this foreign religion as a threat to traditional Japanese values and social order. The government began systematic persecution of Christians, culminating in mass executions and martyrdoms. By 1639, all Portuguese were banned from Japan, and Christianity was driven underground. Despite the isolation policy, Japan maintained limited trade relationships. The Dutch East India Company was confined to the artificial island of Dejima in Nagasaki Harbor, while Chinese merchants were also permitted to trade in Nagasaki under strict government supervision. The sakoku policy had profound effects on Japanese society. On the positive side, it brought political stability, allowed for cultural refinement, and fostered unique artistic developments. However, it also led to technological stagnation and limited scientific progress. The long-term consequences of sakoku were complex. While Japan fell behind technologically, the isolation period created a strong national identity, efficient administrative systems, and a disciplined population that would prove crucial for rapid modernization after 1853. Sakoku represents one of history's most successful isolation policies, preserving Japanese independence and culture while creating the conditions for Japan's eventual emergence as a modern power. During the Edo period, Japan experienced an unprecedented cultural flowering. With peace established under Tokugawa rule, the merchant class grew wealthy and urban centers flourished, creating demand for new forms of entertainment and artistic expression. Kabuki theater emerged in the early 1600s as a vibrant new form of entertainment. Characterized by elaborate makeup, colorful costumes, and dramatic performances, Kabuki appealed especially to the growing merchant class in cities like Edo and Osaka. Kabuki theaters became social gathering places where people from all walks of life could enjoy dramatic tales of love, honor, and conflict. The art form developed distinctive techniques, including the famous onagata, male actors who specialized in playing female roles. Haiku poetry reached its golden age during the Edo period. This 17-syllable form, arranged in 3 lines of 5, 7, and 5 syllables, captured moments of natural beauty and human emotion with remarkable brevity and depth. Masters like Matsuo Basho elevated haiku from simple wordplay to profound artistic expression. These poems often focused on nature, seasons, and fleeting moments, reflecting Buddhist and Shinto influences on Japanese aesthetics. Ukiyo-e, meaning pictures of the floating world, became the most distinctive art form of the Edo period. These woodblock prints depicted scenes of everyday life, beautiful women, kabuki actors, and landscapes, making art accessible to ordinary citizens for the first time. The woodblock printing technique allowed artists to produce multiple copies of their work, making art affordable for the merchant class. Master artists like Hokusai and Hiroshige created iconic images that would later influence Western Impressionist painters. These 3 art forms, kabuki theater, haiku poetry, and ukiyo-e prints, represented a cultural revolution. They moved away from aristocratic traditions to celebrate the lives, emotions, and experiences of common people, creating a distinctly urban Japanese aesthetic. The cultural flowering of the Edo period established artistic traditions that continue to define Japanese identity today. These art forms demonstrated Japan's ability to create sophisticated culture during its period of isolation, laying the foundation for its later cultural influence on the world stage. In July 1853, four imposing warships appeared in Edo Bay, forever changing the course of Japanese history. Commodore Matthew Perry of the United States Navy had arrived with a mission to force Japan's doors open to the Western world. Perry's fleet of steam-powered warships, which the Japanese called black ships due to their dark hulls and billowing smoke, represented a technological marvel that Japan had never encountered. These iron vessels could move without wind and carried powerful cannons. The arrival of Perry's fleet sent shockwaves through Japanese society. For centuries, Japan had successfully maintained its isolation, allowing only limited Dutch and Chinese trade at Nagasaki. Now foreign warships sat in their most important harbor, demanding an audience with the shogun. Perry carried a letter from President Millard Fillmore demanding that Japan open its ports to American ships for trade and refueling. He gave the Japanese leaders time to consider, promising to return the following year for an answer. This diplomatic pressure was backed by the implicit threat of military force. When Perry returned in February 1854 with an even larger fleet, Japan had little choice but to negotiate. The resulting Treaty of Kanagawa opened two ports to American ships and established a U.S. consulate. This marked the end of Japan's two-century isolation policy. The Treaty of Kanagawa was followed by similar unequal treaties with other Western powers. These agreements granted foreigners extraterritorial rights and limited Japan's control over its own tariffs. The Japanese government found itself forced to accept terms that favored foreign interests over Japanese sovereignty. Perry's arrival fundamentally transformed Japan. The shock of technological inferiority and forced opening created deep divisions in Japanese society. Some embraced Western learning and modernization, while others called for expelling the foreign barbarians. This crisis would ultimately lead to the fall of the Tokugawa shogunate and the Meiji Restoration. In 1868, Japan underwent one of the most dramatic transformations in world history. The Meiji Restoration marked the end of over 250 years of Tokugawa rule and the beginning of rapid modernization that would transform Japan from a feudal society into a modern industrial nation. The Restoration returned political power to Emperor Meiji, ending the military rule of the shoguns. This dramatic shift from feudal governance to imperial authority set the stage for comprehensive reforms that would modernize every aspect of Japanese society. The Meiji government established a new political structure with the emperor at its center. Despite the 1889 constitution creating a diet with two houses, real power remained concentrated in the hands of leaders from the Satsuma and Choshu domains who had orchestrated the restoration. The Meiji government implemented sweeping reforms across all sectors of society. These included political restructuring, military modernization, educational transformation, industrial development, and fundamental social changes that would reshape Japanese civilization. One of the most dramatic changes was the abolition of the samurai class. In 1871, the feudal domains were eliminated, and samurai lost their traditional privileges. The government encouraged Western dress and created a new conscript army, fundamentally altering Japan's social hierarchy. Japan rapidly embraced industrialization, establishing factories and workshops throughout the country. Women played a crucial role in this transformation, working in textile mills and other industries that formed the backbone of Japan's emerging modern economy. The Meiji government prioritized military modernization, building a modern navy and adopting Western military technology and tactics. This transformation would soon enable Japan to compete with Western powers on equal terms. Education became a national priority, with the government establishing universal schooling and promoting Western knowledge. Women's education expanded significantly, though traditional elements remained important in Japanese society as the country balanced modernization with cultural preservation. The Meiji period represented a unique blend of traditional Japanese culture and Western modernization. As this artwork shows, Japanese society adapted selectively, incorporating Western elements while maintaining important aspects of traditional culture and identity. In just a few decades, the Meiji Restoration transformed Japan from an isolated feudal society into a modern industrial nation. This remarkable achievement ended feudalism, established a modern government, built an industrial economy, created a powerful military, and revolutionized education, setting the stage for Japan's emergence as a major world power. Following the Meiji Restoration, Japan embarked on an ambitious program of military modernization and territorial expansion. This period would see Japan transform from an isolated island nation into a formidable imperial power through two major conflicts. Japan rapidly modernized its military forces, adopting Western training methods for its army and building a powerful navy modeled after the British Royal Navy. This military transformation would soon be tested in conflicts with its Asian neighbors. The First Sino-Japanese War erupted in 1894 over control of Korea. This conflict demonstrated Japan's new military capabilities as Japanese forces achieved decisive victories against the larger but less modernized Chinese army. The Battle of Pyongyang exemplified Japanese tactical superiority. Japanese forces coordinated surprise attacks from multiple directions, overwhelming Chinese defenders and securing control of the Korean peninsula. The Treaty of Shimonoseki marked Japan's emergence as a regional power. Japan gained Taiwan, the Pescadores Islands, and secured Korean independence from Chinese influence, along with a substantial war indemnity. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905 was even more significant. Japan challenged the Russian Empire over control of Manchuria and Korea, achieving the first major victory of an Asian nation over a European power in modern times. This stunning victory shocked the world and established Japan as a major power. The Treaty of Portsmouth in 1905 gave Japan control over southern Manchuria and the southern half of Sakhalin Island. These military victories transformed Japan's international standing. Japan secured the Anglo-Japanese alliance, gained great power status, and eventually annexed Korea in 1910. In just 50 years, Japan had evolved from an isolated feudal state into a modern imperial power capable of challenging the established world order. By 1941, Japan's imperial ambitions had reached a critical juncture. Seeking to establish the Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, Japan needed to neutralize American naval power in the Pacific to secure its expansion across Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands. On December 7, 1941, at 7:55 a.m., the first wave of Japanese aircraft struck Pearl Harbor. The attack was meticulously planned, with bombers and fighters approaching from multiple directions to maximize damage to the U.S. Pacific Fleet anchored in the harbor. The attack devastated the American fleet. Battleships like the USS Arizona were completely destroyed, with over 1,100 sailors trapped inside. The surprise attack killed over 2,400 Americans and wounded nearly 1,200 more, while crippling much of the Pacific Fleet. The attack brought the United States fully into World War II. Japanese Zero fighters, like this one, dominated the early Pacific battles with their superior maneuverability and range. Japan quickly expanded across the Pacific, capturing territories from the Philippines to the Dutch East Indies. The Pacific War raged for nearly 4 years. American forces, led by Admiral Nimitz and General MacArthur, gradually pushed Japanese forces back through island-hopping campaigns. Battles at Midway, Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa marked the turning tide against Japan. Meanwhile, on the American home front, over 120,000 Japanese Americans were forcibly relocated to internment camps following Executive Order 9066. This represented one of the darkest chapters in American civil liberties during the war. By 1945, Japan faced inevitable defeat, but continued to resist fiercely. President Truman made the fateful decision to use atomic weapons to force Japan's surrender and avoid a costly invasion. On August 6, 1945, the atomic bomb Little Boy was dropped on Hiroshima. The atomic bombings, combined with the Soviet invasion of Manchuria, finally convinced Emperor Hirohito to surrender. On August 15, 1945, Japan announced its surrender, ending World War II. The war had cost Japan millions of lives and left the nation in ruins, setting the stage for American occupation and reconstruction. In August 1945, Japan lay in ruins. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, combined with devastating firebombing campaigns, had reduced major cities to rubble. The once mighty Japanese empire had surrendered unconditionally, facing an uncertain future under foreign occupation. On August 30th, 1945, General Douglas MacArthur arrived in Japan as Supreme Commander for the Allied powers. His mission was unprecedented: to transform Japan from a militaristic empire into a peaceful, democratic nation. The occupation would last 7 years and fundamentally reshape Japanese society. The centerpiece of MacArthur's reforms was Japan's new constitution, adopted in 1947. Drafted largely by American officials, this document established Japan as a pacifist nation, renouncing war and the maintenance of armed forces. It also guaranteed extensive civil liberties and established the emperor as a symbol rather than a sovereign ruler. The occupation brought sweeping democratic reforms to Japanese society. Women gained the right to vote for the first time in 1946, participating in elections wearing traditional kimonos alongside Western dress. Labor unions were legalized, the education system was democratized, and the powerful zaibatsu business conglomerates were broken up to prevent the concentration of economic power. The occupation forces worked closely with Japanese authorities to implement these sweeping changes. American military police patrolled alongside Japanese officers, overseeing the complete dismantling of Japan's military apparatus. The Imperial Japanese Army and Navy were dissolved, military installations were destroyed, and war criminals were prosecuted in the Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal. Beyond domestic reforms, the occupation oversaw the complete dismantling of Japan's overseas empire. Territories acquired since the Meiji period were returned. Korea gained independence, Manchuria was returned to China, and Taiwan was ceded to the Republic of China. Millions of Japanese civilians and soldiers were repatriated from across Asia, marking the end of Japan's imperial ambitions. By 1952, when the San Francisco Peace Treaty officially ended the occupation, Japan had been fundamentally transformed. The pacifist constitution, democratic institutions, and social reforms established during this period would define modern Japan. The occupation succeeded in creating a stable, peaceful democracy that would become America's most important ally in Asia and eventually emerge as an economic superpower. In 1945, Japan lay in ruins. Cities were destroyed, industry was shattered, and the economy was devastated. Yet within just 4 decades, Japan would transform itself into the world's second-largest economy, achieving what historians call the Japanese economic miracle. The foundations of Japan's economic miracle were laid through a combination of strategic government policies, technological innovation, and an extraordinary work ethic. The Ministry of International Trade and Industry, or Meiji, coordinated industrial development and guided Japan's transformation from a war-torn nation into a manufacturing powerhouse. Japanese workers and engineers became renowned for their dedication and precision. Factories operated with remarkable efficiency, producing high-quality goods that would soon compete with and surpass Western products. The concept of continuous improvement, or kaizen, became central to Japanese manufacturing philosophy. By the 1960s, Japan's economic growth reached extraordinary levels, averaging over 10% annually. The country became a global leader in consumer electronics, automotive manufacturing, and precision machinery. Japanese brands like Sony, Toyota, and Honda began to dominate international markets. Japan's technological innovations captured the world's imagination. The Sony Walkman revolutionized personal entertainment, while the bullet train demonstrated Japan's engineering prowess. These innovations symbolized Japan's emergence as a technological superpower, combining precision engineering with consumer appeal. Japanese manufacturing culture embraced automation and robotics earlier than most nations. Factories filled with precision machinery and robotic systems became symbols of Japan's technological advancement. This automation revolution helped Japan maintain its competitive edge in global markets. By the 1980s, Japan had achieved the impossible. From the ashes of defeat, it had become the world's second-largest economy. Japanese companies dominated global markets in automobiles, electronics, and machinery. The economic miracle was complete, transforming Japan into a modern economic superpower that would influence global business practices for decades to come. Contemporary Japan stands as a fascinating paradox, a nation that has achieved remarkable technological advancement and global cultural influence, while simultaneously grappling with profound demographic and economic challenges that will shape its future. Modern Japan presents a stunning visual testament to human ingenuity. Tokyo's sprawling metropolis, with its dense network of illuminated skyscrapers and efficient transportation systems, represents one of the world's most advanced urban environments. Japan's technological infrastructure is exemplified by its world-renowned transportation systems. The Shinkansen bullet trains, with their precision timing and advanced engineering, represent the pinnacle of rail technology and continue to set global standards for efficiency and safety. In robotics and artificial intelligence, Japan leads the world in innovation. From humanoid robots that assist the elderly to advanced manufacturing automation, Japanese technology companies continue to push the boundaries of what machines can accomplish. Japan's cultural influence extends far beyond its technological achievements. Through anime, manga, video games, and popular culture, Japan has created a global soft power phenomenon that reaches billions of people worldwide. However, beneath this technological and cultural success lies a series of profound challenges. Japan faces the world's most rapidly aging society, with over 28% of its population now over 65 years old, creating unprecedented pressures on healthcare, pensions, and the workforce. Compounding this challenge is Japan's declining birth rate, which has fallen to just 1.3 children per woman, well below the replacement level of 2.1. This demographic trend threatens long-term economic growth and social stability. Despite these internal challenges, Japan maintains a crucial role in international diplomacy. As a key ally of the United States and a major economic power in Asia, Japan navigates complex relationships with China, South Korea, and other regional partners while promoting peace and stability. Looking toward the future, Japan's enduring legacy lies not only in its remarkable transformation from feudal isolation to global influence, but in its ongoing efforts to balance tradition with innovation, addressing demographic challenges while maintaining its position as a technological and cultural leader. From ancient Jomon pottery to cutting-edge robotics, from samurai honor codes to anime storytelling, Japan's journey through history demonstrates the remarkable capacity of a nation to preserve its cultural essence while embracing transformative change. This balance will be crucial as Japan faces the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century.